Which UHF radio do you really need? Handheld UHF portable radio, or a suction cup mounted radio with a magnetic antenna, or a permanent mounted radio which is fixed inside your vehicle with the antenna fixed on the roof? And which type of antenna do you need? Well, it all depends on different factors, and I'm going to help you avoid all the sales pitches that will get you the wrong antenna or the wrong radio choice. So stay tuned for the pros and cons and the 6 scenarios where I help explain to you what I recommend you need. And you'll be surprised. You may not need as much as what you think, or you actually may need more than what you think. Stay tuned. Before we go any further, we need to understand all the radios we're talking about. Handheld radios, pretty simple really. You guys should know these. We've got a 0.5 watt, which is the base and cheapest sort of level, as in power, up to a 5 watt. This is the maximum power we're allowed to cast in Australia without a license. 5 watt radio to 0.5 watt. Obviously the 5 watt radio is more expensive, more robust, and a lot better than this one. But if you want to know the full details, there's a video going on about 5, 3, 2, 1, and 0.5 watts. We do a whole heap of range tests inside the vehicle as well. So check that out if you want to know more about this. Moving on though, we have the portable mounted radio. So this is a suction cup based one. It uses DC power in your vehicle, so you plug that in, doesn't rely on a battery. You get an antenna which you stick, or you magnetize to the roof of your car. A handset right here which we can change channels on. A fixed mounted radio. Welcome to the future. I've installed one in my vehicle now. Mine is a hideaway unit with all the controls on the handpiece. Unit is in here. You can put them anywhere you like. Now, some units will have the old style LED screen with all the touch buttons and dials on it. All fixed mounted radio units will have the antenna fixed outside the vehicle and requires installation. Now you understand all the different radios we're going to talk about. Let's get into the pros and cons. Handheld radios, pros and cons. You will note that I'm outside the vehicle, and this is because these are designed for being outside the vehicle. So there will be a lot of cons with this, but keep that in mind. These are meant not to be used in the vehicle, although you can. The pros, extremely portable. I can take this and leave my car and walk around and radio through to people once I left my car, whilst I can still use it inside the car. Short range convoys, this will do fine, so long as you don't have a big canopy behind you blocking all your signal, because don't forget, you're holding this inside your vehicle. There's a whole video on that too. It's also great for spotting. If you need to spot someone on a gnarly section on a track, or talk someone through where there might be a washout or something, it's a great thing, a spotting radio. Also, if you're reversing a caravan or a camper trailer, could stand outside the vehicle and let you know if you need to give it a right hand down or a left hand down. These are also a very good backup. So when I would recommend having a handheld for most situations is you already have a vehicle mounted radio. You snap your antenna, something goes wrong with your radio, this is your backup. This will be your savior. Well, we hit a bit of a snag on the way out there. We did a bit of a turnaround, pushed it through a bush. You get that. Anyone can borrow this. You can take this from one vehicle to another vehicle. And the cost, well, there's no installation cost of this. You just have a radio and off you go. You're ready to go. And it relies on battery power. But this is also a con, which we'll get to now. Battery power. Once it runs out of battery, you need to charge it. Torbs is charging one now, so I can't charge mine right now. You also need to make a facility for charging your batteries in the front of your vehicle if you want to use this as your sole radio. So it's something you need to be aware of. With some of these radios, you can't charge it and use it at the same time. Keep that in mind. If you only got one, you're out of comms until it's charged. Handheld while driving. While you're driving, it's not the best thing to have or do. Also, when you leave it on your seat, you've got to reach for it. It can fall down your seat, it can fall down anywhere. We also have very limited range on these units. It restricts your range because you have this Faraday cage around you. You've got your body blocking the signal, you've got your seat, you've got everything behind you. If you've got a canopy, it's very hard for the signal to come out. It must be held upright. Antennas have to be like this. If they're on the side, they're not going to cast the signal the way you want it to be cast. So if you hold it like this, it'll be cast everywhere. If you hold it like that, it'll be cast in this direction. No signals going that way. So if you're holding it like this in the car or like that, anyone you're talking to may not actually be able to hear you. This in a convoy is okay if it's a close convoy or a short convoy. But if you hit those dusty roads, even 2 vehicles hitting a dusty road, sometimes you need kilometers between you guys because the dust is so bad. There's no wind to push the dust away. There is a massive gap. This may not reach your mate up ahead or behind you. Also in big convoys, this isn't the best option because if you're in the middle of, say, a 12-car convoy, you may not even be able to hear the person at the front and you may not hear the person at the back. So you kind of don't really know what's going on, and everyone else will get frustrated because they have to relay to you what the lead vehicle or what someone else said. So it can be frustrating in a big convoy. Pros and cons with the portable unit. Let's start with the pros. It's portable. I can carry it around in here. I don't have to have this clutter on my vehicle all the time. I can lend this to anyone else. It can go on any vehicle. It's plug and play. That's another pro. And it's constant power. All I've got to do is turn my vehicle on and we got power. Doesn't rely on a battery. Just to reinforce my point about plug and play, we're done. No installation costs involved, but your range is a bit limited. The other pro is you actually get a handset with it. You can change the stations on here as well, or your channels. That's all the pros. Let's get to the cons. Hear that? It does that as you're driving. Because it hangs on the window, you can put it anywhere you like, but it's got to be somewhere within reason. And that somewhere within reason seems to fall over your stereo. And if your stereo is touchscreen, this keeps happening as you're driving. Oh, now I'm connecting someone else's phone. So I've had it before where it's gone to like a language menu even, and I had to quickly get out of it. So this, just touching that screen, gets really annoying. So you got to find the good spot to mount it. And if it's too close to your steering wheel, you can get tangled up here, which is dangerous. Too far away, well, you got to reach for it. The other con with a portable radio, on the suction mount sitting up so high, you got a cable going across the dash here for the antenna, you got a cable going down here for power, and then of course you got the one that's not unavoidable because all radios have this bit hanging around, dangling around. There's 3 wires that are dangling around. If you have a permanent mounted unit, obviously all those wires are hidden away. The next con, and the last con for that unit. Yeah, look, we have the antenna on the outside of the vehicle, which is great. If you have a roof rack, this isn't going to do much. And the other thing, it just doesn't have that great a range. I mean, look at the size of this antenna compared to a normal UHF antenna on a vehicle mounted radio. Those are the cons. We're talking pros with the fixed mount radio in your vehicle. Antennas. You get to mount your antenna anywhere you like, and you can choose a different size as well. And if you have a bull bar, you could mount it on the front, or even better, you can mount it on the roof. Either way, you're going to get superior coverage and range compared to a handheld or that portable thing in there. The antenna for the portable one is right here. Check out that. Okay, this is a 2.1 dBi. I believe, I don't even know what this is, but that there just shows you how much difference it's going to be. And then you have this one. It's obvious. You're going to get far more range out of a fixed radio. It doesn't matter what type of radio, what brand of radio it is, you're going to have superior range compared to a handheld or a portable one like that. This is what I'm going to put in a HILUX eventually when I get time. Hideaway units, there's a pro there already. Some of these you can hide away. You can unplug this, stow it away in your glove box, nothing's in your way. As opposed to these portable suction cup units, you got wires everywhere. This, you won't have wires. It'll be, well, you will have wires, but they'll be stowed away. There'll be no exposed wires going around. They're all inside your dash, out of the way. The only wire that's going to hang out is your hand unit that you're talking on, which you obviously need. The audio on these units is obviously also far better because you get a speaker inside these and you get a speaker inside a lot of the handsets as well. With a fixed mount unit, there are way more features. And a lot of these features are also easy to access because you have far more buttons. This is on a handset. Now, some actual mounted units, you'll have like a illuminated display with heaps of dials and buttons on it. All the features are much easier to access and actually figure out how to use. Now to the cons, the cost of these units. It's not just the cost of the unit, it's also the install of the unit. If you have a modern vehicle, you know, you're going to want it professionally installed. It's not that easy to install a permanent fixed unit into a modern vehicle. In an old vehicle, yeah, sure. But keep that in mind. If you're a DIYer, that doesn't come into fact. They're not portable. Once they're mounted into a vehicle, you're more than likely going to sell your vehicle with that unit. So it's a once-off bought thing. It'll leave with the vehicle should you sell it. You can go to the effort to remove it, but sometimes you're leaving a big open gap in your dash, depending on what kind of mounted unit you have. Depending on how you've wired the actual unit in, if it's to a permanent power and you forget to turn it off, well, it can drain a little bit of your battery. It's unlikely to give you a flat battery, but say if you're a FIFO worker, you leave your vehicle for 2 weeks and the radio's on and it's on a very frequently used channel like channel 40, you'll probably come home to a flat battery. Antennas, speaking purely from experience here. I could talk about this all day, but I'm going to keep this as brief as possible and just get straight to the point. This style of antenna here is for caravanners and road warriors, people who don't spend a lot of time on corrugations and in the bush. These kind of whips, they are quite prone to snapping, especially corrugations. It just sends this harmonic up through here. They will either unscrew and fling off into the bush, or they'll snap, rendering your comms quite useless. Then you go to your backup handheld. Then we move on to this style, fiberglass. This is much more robust. Now, the other thing about fiberglass is they don't flex much. And that's a good thing because your radio casts a signal out like that. So if your antenna's leaning, it's going to start casting up and down, if you know what I mean. That's where these, when you head into a strong headwind, especially when they're longer, they'll tend to flex a bit as well. So that's another little con with these. Then you go to the big boys here. Now this is what I would use. And this is what I use on a Land Cruiser. And this is what Torben uses as well. They're quite thick, they will not bend. Look, if you flog it into a low branch, you will shatter this. Okay, I have shattered one of these after a lot of punishment. So that's something you do have to keep in mind. You can even get like a little rubber ducky. They're even better. They can take a lot of punishment, but they need to be on your roof to be any good. This is great on your roof. This is great on your bull bar. And it will not bend, so your signal will stay on that plane. The style of antenna we've spoken about. Now to talk about size of antenna. 2.1 dBi versus 6.6. There is an entire video on that. Now I want you to watch that to make your choice there. It'll be a link at the end of the video because it's a whole video on its own. We did a full test, and from that you can judge what you think you may need. And just to clarify, what you see here is pretty much what's on the inside of these two. It's just the casing that holds it stiff so it doesn't bend. So would you rather have a floppy or a stiffy? Where to mount your antenna? That's a good question, especially if you don't have a bull bar, but that is actually not a bad thing. You can get these brackets like that, and on most vehicles, they may be able to sit like this. Personally, I don't like these. I don't think you should go for that. If you do have a roof rack on your vehicle, that's when I reckon or recommend that you mount your antenna on top of your roof rack. And I've done that for about 3 to 4 years on my Land Cruiser, and it's the best signal I've ever got in my entire life of driving 4-wheel drives with communications is up on a roof with a short stubby antenna like this. Not a big one, just that one. Fold down brackets are great to install on your roof rack should you install something like this. But if you have a rubber ducky antenna, those little floppy ones like you can see right now, you can just leave that up there like that. It can hit anything you like, it'll just flick back up. My vehicle, you'll see a flip down bracket already installed on top of my roof rack. But look, if you don't have a roof rack, don't stress. If you have a ute and you have a roll bar, use a roll bar. You'll be able to fabricate something or make something up to mount your antenna. That's fine too, because you're up high. If you have a wagon and you have a rear wheel carrier or something, or even that bracket I showed you, you can actually have that at the back of your barn door, and you can hang your antenna at the back of the vehicle up high as well. That is another really good spot to hang your antenna. If you go with the bull bar option, you're probably going to look at something like this, although I would recommend having it out more to the side, because then you've got more of a chance of casting your signal down the side of your vehicle. Also, it's not right in the middle of your vision, especially if you have a light bulb there, it's going to shine in here and it's going to bounce back at you. Also, you're constantly looking at something that's in front of you, like it's cutting your image. I'm not going to talk about cheap, nasty crap that you can buy, like the cheapest radio from China or something like that. None of that stuff's going to work for you here, okay? It's just going to give you grief in the long run. Look at Australian made or a reputable brand at least. So let's talk about handhelds. Don't even bother anything under 3 watts. Just forget about it. Those radios are toys, they're for kids, they're for around camp, they're not for your vehicle. 5 watt radio is what I would recommend, or 3 watt at worst case. 5 watts, you're looking at about 200 to 250 bucks per unit. If you can get a box of 2 in them on special, you might be lucky to find out for 400 bucks, maybe even less, probably more. Then we move to the portable unit that's in the vehicle installed right now. That is $300, but that's all you pay. It's plug and play, it's in there, that's all you gotta do. But now we go to the vehicle mounted units. You have to pay for an installer. So the vehicle mounted unit to start with will cost anywhere from $300 to $500, maybe a bit more, depending on the type of unit you buy. That's around about a good price for a good quality unit. Then we have the antenna, which you also need to purchase. That is going to cost you about 200 bucks for something decent and something robust. So now we're looking at, we're already up at like nearly 800 bucks now, depending on what unit you chose, maybe $700. Install. That is where you're going to add some extra cost. So to install a radio, you can look at anywhere from $700 to $1,000 to have a radio in there working the way it should be working. If you can DIY install, sure, then a vehicle mounted radio is the way to go. It's now time for the stuff that matters. What I recommend you guys need for your situation or your scenario, wherever you're towing, wherever you got a new car, old car, or wherever you're just not sure what to do yet. I'm gonna run through all those scenarios right now, but before that, I'm going to discuss what I'm going to do with my vehicle. Now, from my experience, I've come from a Land Cruiser. I still have that Land Cruiser, by the way. I've come from a Land Cruiser with 2 permanently mounted radios, which is the ultimate of ultimate, having 2 permanent mounted radios. I've gone from that to just driving around with a handheld radio like this. This got a bit frustrating, but it's okay for a day trip. Like today, heading out here recording, me and the cameraman talking on this radio, it's just easy, it's portable. But if I'm going on a trip like the shakedown trip I did, that's portable mounted radio inside, that's permanently powered, that will be my choice. But I've now gone to a point where I want to install a radio in the vehicle. And the reason why I hadn't done that already is because I had nowhere to install my antenna. I now do, because I have a roof rack. So, with that in mind, I'm going to install the XRS unit, the same one that I have in my Land Cruiser. This is a 370C. That's going on the HILUX. This is going to be my backup radio. I'm going to put a 2.1 dBi antenna on the roof of the HILUX. That's going to be my setup. Very similar to the Land Cruiser, but I'm not going to have 2 permanent mounted radios, just one. This is a hideaway unit. It's a new car. I don't really have anywhere to put a radio that has all the stuff on it. So hideaway unit has been my choice. Everything's on the handset. That's a very strong point I want to make there. New car, real estate for mounting stuff like this is very, like there's nothing there. There's nowhere to really put it. And this is my second radio. This will be on channel 40, so I can hear truckies, hear roadworks. This on my private and convoy channel. Now to all the scenarios to help you guys out. Scenario number 1, you have an old vehicle, pre-2000 or even pre-2005. They're a lot easier to work with, they're a lot easier to DIY install. So for a vehicle like that, just get yourself a permanently fixed mounted radio and do a bit of a DIY job. If you don't really know how to do it, get your mate over and help you do a DIY job. It's going to cost you a couple of cartons, maybe 1 carton. Depends how good your mate is, but that's what I would recommend. Scenario number 2, you have a brand new vehicle. If you want to fit a permanent radio in that vehicle, you want to get a hideaway unit because there's not that much space on your dash these days. There's airbags freaking everywhere for a start, they're not the easiest to wire in either. So if you're not competent in wiring those things, you need to pay someone to do that. And if you bought a brand new vehicle, well then most likely you can afford to get someone to install it. You can also afford to get a decent quality radio. If you buy a cheap radio, it may not, look, I'm not saying it's not going to last as long. Well, probably won't last as long anyway, but it may last the duration you need it to, but the quality may be crap. I've been there before. I've had a real cheap ass radio in my car and I hated it. Ripped it out straight away. Scenario number 3. You're not sure what you actually want to do. You're not sure if you're going to commit to full driving. Therefore, get a handheld radio, because you're not forking out the extra cost of installing something. You have your handheld radio. If you decide to install one later because, hey, now the bug's bitten you and you're spending money in your car and you're heading out there, here and everywhere, then you can buy another permanent fixed mount radio later, and the handheld you bought at the start is not rendered useless. It's a good backup radio, it's a good spotting radio, it's a good around camp radio. So you're not really wasting any money by buying one of these before you buy a permanently mounted radio. Scenario number 4. You know you are a dedicated full driver, but you're really tight on budget. You can't really afford to spend that money on that really good radio that you really want. Look, trust me on this. Take your time, save your money, make it happen. If you really want it, you can make it happen. The problem is, if you buy a cheap radio, it may fail on you, it may not be as good as what you wanted it to, and then later on, you're going to be forced to upgrade it anyway. So do your research, take your time. There are some good quality units out there that aren't that expensive as well. You don't have to go for like the real flashy ones that have that Bluetooth to your phone and that. Just get something that can do 5 watts and is a reputable brand, or is a quality brand that you actually trust yourself. It's not all about what I trust, it's also about what you trust as well. The tourer, the bush rig. Okay, you're heading out, you're doing some tough tracks, you need a permanently mounted radio for a start, because touring, tough tracks, whatever, you need good quality gear, you need to have communication with the whole convoy. You also need to have a handheld so that your passenger can jump out, or one of your mates can jump out and guide you through something. So handheld is a must, and a permanently fixed radio, in my opinion, is a must for that. Because if you're out there doing all that kind of stuff, well, you are a dedicated full driver. You're dedicated to that lifestyle. The Caravanner, or the Road Warrior. You spend a lot of time on the highway, you need a radio. You definitely need a radio. In fact, you need 2 radios. If you're reversing a big ass caravan, it might be hard for the wife or whatever to yell at you when you're reversing. Give her a bloody handheld radio so she can talk to you while you're reversing, and she can talk to you through your permanently mounted radio in your vehicle. If you're towing a caravan, you must have a UHF radio on the highway. For example, you want to overtake a road train, or a road train wants to overtake you, they can communicate with each other. It's a much more safer as well. If the information has helped you guys out, please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed yet, you can do so down on one of those corners. Now, there are 2 extra videos that can be used as a good resource for you guys. There's one over here, the 2.1 versus 6.6 dBi. That's with the antennas. And there's one over here about the range test on the handheld radios that me and Torbs did. So go and check those out, and this will help you make your choice even easier. Until next time, see you later.